Welcome to episode 194 of Saturday Football Uncensored, brought to you by Saturday Down South and Texas Pete. On today's episode, we talk about the ongoing Tez Walker NCAA situation and then preview and predict week 3. Plus, we welcome on Michael Bratton, aka SEC Mike, to preview the big Tennessee-Florida matchup in the Swamp Saturday night. You can find this show on our website, SaturdayDownSouth.com, and Apple and Spotify. Don't forget to join us for the live recording of the show every Sunday at 8 Eastern Time on the Saturday Down South YouTube page. Find clips from the show on Twitter at SatDownSouth and at SatFB Uncensored, on Instagram and TikTok at Saturday Down South, and on YouTube, Saturday Down South. Now, here's the show. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Saturday Football Uncensored, brought to you by Saturday Down South and Texas Pete. I'm your host, Tyler Huck, and with me as always, Chris Marler. Chris, big week 3 on deck.
I mean, I think it is. It's like
I'm always the guy that's
JD
like, not a great week.
But it's still a week of football.
And that's exactly.
JD Pickell put this out earlier this week, and he said, or like news today, and it was like, whenever your friends tell you like, oh, it's like this week sucks, or this like the slate is not that great. Like a couple weeks ago, we were talking about only 21 more days till football. So it's like, I mean, listen, here's what I love, and this is what I've
talk about conference realignment.
Yeah, exactly. I think that like there's the thing that's gonna be fun about this, especially if you're an SEC fan. There's good SEC football on all day. Like there's meaningful SEC football on all day, and I think that we're going to learn a lot about a lot of teams this week, whether like the slate might not look great, but we're going to certainly learn a lot about a lot of teams. Like we're going to learn a lot about Alabama. We're going to learn to see what Georgia has a little bit. We're going to learn to see if South Carolina has a lot of fight in them as well. We get to see about Tennessee go to Florida, trying to end all that stuff and that horrible streak. And then LSU at Mississippi State is a sneaky good game too.
Yeah, I agree. The SEC is actually the best matchups for this weekend.
Yeah.
Nationally is a little bit slower, but we're going to get into the thick of the season starting next week. There's some big matchups.
Yeah.
You got Colorado hosting game day this week, which is pretty cool.
Who do they have?
It's Colorado State, but I think they're just taking the opportunity. 2-0, biggest story in college football right now. So that'll be cool to see the turnout for that. It'll be interesting to see if people are just smoking weed out there. That's what kind of they do in Boulder, is smoke weed in fields. So
is that real?
Yeah. Well,
in
at least on
fields?
like an open, like in the quad.
Smoking drugs,
bro.
So hold on real quick. I can't wait for that to be, and maybe it already is a thing from fucking boomer Facebook, Twitter. That's just going to be like, only reason he's got any success out there is because they're allowed to do drugs nonstop. All them players come out there with that NIL money buying all them drugs.
See what happens when Deion gets out to Colorado, the drugs show up.
That's
where we have, Henry, we have been doing this, smoking weed out here for decades.
Yeah, decades.
All right, well, before we get into week 3, Tez Walker. This is a weird situation. I mean, so we've already kind of discussed like how shitty the NCAA has treated this case specifically. Right. For those that don't know the story, this receiver who was transferring into UNC this year, he was really good at Kent State last year. This is technically his second transfer, which would normally deem him ineligible for the season. But there was kind of some circumstances around this. He originally signed out of high school with North Carolina Central, and because of COVID, the 2020 season, they never played it at that level. So he just never even played for the team. Mm-hmm. Immediately transferred out, went to Kent State, put up some monster numbers, and then transferred to UNC, not only probably for better exposure, but also he had mental health issues, which he cited as a reason for leaving, and a need to return to his home state, which is North Carolina. We all know now that the NCAA was like, no, sorry, we don't care about your mental health. We don't care about your never have played for NCCU. We're not going to let you play. And that was appealed. They denied it again. Mac Brown came out and was like, he wrote basically his version of a boomer Facebook post towards the NCAA. And now there's some weird stuff going on.
So there's so many thoughts on this, and you guys already know where I'm going to lean. If it's with the NCAA, I'm not going to ever sit here and say that, hey, yeah, you should go threaten them.
And that's what's happening.
I'm in a bit of a mood today, and I'll say that. So I will also tell you, probably regrettably later, if there was a group of people around college football that I would kind of understand getting threats, probably the NCAA.
Yeah.
Because you're the governing body that has fucked this whole thing up for years. Like for years. You've shown repeatedly that you don't give a shit about the good of the whole. And then while you do it, it's like you bang the gavel with one hand and then pat yourself on the back for making the wrong decision with the other. And it blows my fucking mind because it's like, you guys, this was reviewed 8 different times, they said, or it went through like 8 different processes of being in review. How many things could have come up that have been like, no, I don't know. I think he needs to sit out a year. I just think there's two, like, and here's one thing too. I thought about this trying to be objective. If you're saying that, like, all right, if we do it for this person, we have to do it for everyone, then maybe that's where the ruling comes from. But also it's like, who fucking cares? Like, you've gone out of your way to really like have a stranglehold on like all college athletics, and you've lost so much of the power you had in college football. Thank God. And again, the only reason we're here with all this NIL shit and transfer portal stuff is because the NCAA finally realized they didn't have a lot of power and wiped their hands of it and then just walked away. When I heard this ruling, I was shocked that it was even being brought up, because if I'm Mac Brown, guess what? Tez Walker's playing on Saturday.
Right.
Tez Walker every Saturday.
And the NCAA could come in and say, well, you're breaking the rules. We're going to go under investigation. Okay, good.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
And you're going to find something wrong. I'm sure you're going to find something wrong. By the time you do, because let's not forget, they knew in 2016 what was happening with the NIL stuff and where this was all headed. And so they're going to find something wrong. But like by the time they do, they're probably not going to be the governing body anymore. Like, this whole thing is so stupid. And the mental health part of it too. Like, there's just all these different examples of like that come to mind of, okay, well, like here's another example of when they fucked over somebody. Like the tight end from Georgia that went to Illinois after his grandpa died has to sit out an extra year. How about Will Greer taking over-the-counter supplements from fucking GNC? I'd say what, the internet's a big place. If you want to find some illegal like performance-enhancing drugs, you can find them. And you're also in Florida, so you could probably just go to a fucking Wawa and find them there too. Like, and he gets benched for a half season because of whatever, right? Like over-the-counter stimulants, or not stimulants, over-the-counter drugs. Like every turn they make a worse decision than before. It kind of reminds me of my own life, and I don't get it. Like I don't get how they're like I just, it's crazy to me that we're still allowing them to do this. But the part here that we're going to talk about is the threats. Like,
well, I think out of everything that's happening with this case, I think the most screwed up thing is that he transferred before they decided that they were going to crack down on the rule with the waivers.
Right.
So they're retroactively going back and applying this to him. Just an insane. I just, the more that they do this kind of stuff, the quicker they will be completely cut out of college football. So maybe Tez Walker has to sacrifice for the sum of the whole.
So yeah, maybe, but also I feel like this has been happening constantly for years and years and years. And here's another question for you, Tyler. Like, if we're being objective, right? Let's try to see it from the NCAA standpoint. What?
I think I've tried stuff.
Yeah. What benefit? What is the benefit? Like, or like, what is the positive? What is the reason? What is any of that for why he should not be allowed to play this year? What ground? What is the hill you're dying on besides your own fucking ridiculous white-knuckled stranglehold on whatever little power you have left? What are you gaining from it?
The only thing that I could try to come up with, if you're trying to play devil's advocate, is what you already brought up, which is this case being looked at and said, well, you let Ted, because it's tough to prove mental health.
Right.
So And I'm not saying that he is making that up.
Right.
But someone could reasonably say, well, I'm having mental health issues. I need to go back to my home state. You let Tez Walker do it. You set precedents on this. So you have to let me do it as well. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah.
Is they're really just trying to save their own headaches for later down the road. But
Right.
I don't know, man. It's just they never seem to make the right decision. So not too surprised. But yeah, now like members of the NCAA are receiving like
threats,
real threats, like dangerous threats on their lives.
Right.
Because
And here's
I'm not condoning that. That's obviously that's crazy person behavior.
Can you
but
imagine if this was a Tennessee player? Like Vol Twitter about that action, bro. I mean, no. So here's the quote too that was said: the D1 board is troubled by the public remarks made last week by some University of North Carolina leadership. That was said D1 board chair Jeer Moorhead and D1 board vice chair Christopher. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce this stupid fucking last name.
Like less head, am I right? This guy's a loser.
More like probably never got head, and that's why he's making these decisions. Those comments directly. Those. Boom. Those comments directly contradict what we and our fellow Division I members and coaches called for vociferously, including UNC's own football coach. We are a membership organization rather than pursue a public relations campaign that can contribute to charged environment for our peers who volunteer on committees. Now, and hear that word again? It's because this is a volunteer organization. This is a volunteer organization that rakes in over $1 billion in earnings, by the way.
Yeah, the president makes millions of dollars a year.
Right. But they rake it in per year over $1 billion. And I know that because they make they make over 900 million just in those 3 weeks in March for the tournament. We encourage members to use established and agreed upon procedures to voice concerns, propose and adopt rule or policy changes if they are dissatisfied. So here we go. Like you set the rules in place. Here are the rules that we have come up with. Here are the rules. Here's how you have to abide by the rules. Also, if you disagree with them, here's the process and what you're allowed to say and not to say. What kind of North Korea fucking shit is that? Like, you don't get to come out here and say, hey, we made an objectively bad take for the umpteenth time, but you better not talk about it because now our feelings hurt. It's like, I'm not condoning threats, but like, oh no, the consequences of our own actions. People are upset. People are upset about going to bat for here's the thing too. People are upset because you're talking about an individual that we can all see, an 18 to 22-year-old kid who has been public with why he needed to go to a new school, public about mental health, which is now something that is like increasingly present and prevalent around the country and taken seriously. And then the NCAA. And I look at the NCAA almost like, oh man, no matter what decision they made, like if it was negative, it was probably going to be looked at in a bad way. But then I also look at the NCAA and like, fuck them, because like they've done this repeatedly. Here's the thing, Tyler. Think about political campaigns, or like, I'm trying to think if there's I feel like there's something in the past couple of days. And again, I'm just in a mood today. So I'm like, my brain's all over the place, but like, I feel like there's something in the past couple of days where somebody has turned something into like a positive PR campaign over bullshit, right? Like the NCAA makes like over $1 billion a year. How have we never seen one positive PR campaign from a player that has been benefited? We haven't seen one fucking story from a player in any level, Division 1, 2, 3, whatever else there is out there in fucking Kansas. Like, we haven't seen one person come forward and be like, you know what? The NCAA changed my life.
No. We've seen that. They go to work at Enterprise.
Yeah, you go to work at Enterprise where they give you the tools to be your own boss, and you work 65 hours a week right out of college, and you make $30,000 a year. That is like that. That is
we're going pro in something other than sports. In this case,
bet the people that work at Enterprise. I bet that the NCAA makes no money off those commercials.
Yeah, I'm just now picturing like Mac Brown coming back out with like another. He just puts it on the notes app, and he calls him Kim Jong Less Head.
I love Mac Brown going to bat for them, and like and talk about a coach that has like, from an age standpoint, especially how he's like, people might think he doesn't understand young kids now. Him doing that, I think, is a really big deal for a lot of reasons. So
yeah, it's I guess there's still time for the NCAA to change their mind on this, and he could play midseason, but they don't seem to be making any sort of move to change their mind here. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to watch. Um, let's go ahead and take a break. On the other side, we're gonna welcome
No,
Mike
no break.
Bratton.
I'm not taking a break. I got to prove to some people that I'm in shape enough to be able to last like a full 60 minutes of this podcast. I was out of breath last week. It was not good.
Oh, were people talking about that?
People were talking about it. Somebody called
Which
me an
one?
old man.
The one from the hotel?
Yeah.
Why were you so? I don't get it. Were you working out?
Uh-huh. I don't know. I was just like the
Hitting the pelly?
I wish I had a Pelly. I wish I
Yeah.
had a Pelly. No, it was just I think it's like this. It wasn't just the last episode. It's been several episodes. Maybe I just talked too fast. I don't know. We don't need to take a break. We need to get into the first game of the week. And what we'll do is we're going to be joined by our good friend here shortly to talk about it. Michael Bratton, SEC Mike, noted Tennessee homer and hater of Alabama football, but also a guy that always has his finger on the pulse of SEC football as well. And we're going to get into the Tennessee Florida talk. So let's I think that let's set the stage a little bit here, because I think that I don't know how old our crowd is, and I feel like I talk about this a lot, and I've talked about it in the past, but this was one of my favorite rivalries, if not my favorite rivalry as a kid, growing up as a fan of an SEC football team, because this is when you would always start the year. Like, this was the first SEC game of the year on CBS. It always seemed like it had huge implications because you had Florida, who was like, national power, Tennessee, who had been, but was trying to get back to it with Peyton Manning. And a lot of times, whoever won that game on the third week of September was not only going to win the division in the SEC East, but probably the conference. And tons of talent, some like really good games, like all through the late 90s, early 2000s. I mean, hell, even now, like when some of the teams have been like each program's been kind of dormant at times, some really good games as well. I mean, your thoughts on this rivalry as somebody that like I know this is kind of funny because it's like I'm going to probably pull for Florida as a fan because of Tennessee, and you're going to pull for Tennessee because of as a fan because of Florida.
Okay, so I have a very personal connection to this rivalry. And in fact, the last time that Tennessee won in the Swamp, I was in Knoxville.
Oh,
I was a senior in high school.
mm-hmm.
My best friend's his brother went to Tennessee. And he's like, "Yeah, you guys should come up. It's an away game, so it'll be a little bit easier to get into bars and stuff like that." And we were 17 years old, and I'll never forget. I was super into college football, obviously. Hated Florida, obviously.
Yeah.
Tennessee wins that day. I believe Casey Clausen. Which Clausen brother was the QB?
I believe it was Casey.
I think it was too. So I believe it was a day game because that night I was out in the bars. Casey Clausen walks in the bar. So they had like come back. Yeah. And I was like, I was 17. So I was like, this is awesome. And I went up to him. I was like, dude, awesome. I hate Florida. And he blew me off. Just total dickhead.
Yeah. No way, a Clausen being a dickhead? That's crazy.
But it was so memorable because me and my buddy, both 17, made out with chicks at the bar that night. College chicks. We thought we were the coolest people in the world. So that was it. Now look at me.
Made out with
no
chicks
hair.
At the bar
I have 2 kids.
Uh-huh.
That's how long ago it was since Florida won this, or since Tennessee beat Florida in Gainesville.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, like that time period was when this rivalry was like at its height. And I think a lot of it went away because it hasn't been a matchup in the Swamp.
It's been, and we've talked about this before.
Down.
Yeah, Tennessee's been down, and Florida's had times in periods like where they've been down. And I brought this up. It's a stat I brought up a couple of weeks back. We were doing our preview for the division and all that kind of stuff. There's a big monkey on your back if you're Tennessee still with this game. And I think that they have a very special opportunity to go down and get that monkey off their back. But you talk about a team that's beaten Florida twice in the Swamp in the last 51 years. Tyler, that stat that I brought up on August 20th of this year is finally making the rounds. It's going everywhere, and people are astonished by it.
It is pretty astonishing.
It is pretty astonishing. And listen, I know that like some Tennessee fans have been like, we didn't play him every year. I don't care. You played him a shit ton of times. You didn't play him for like a 6-year span in like the late 70s. But
yeah, we're talking 51 years. You have 2 wins,
right? 2 wins in the Swamp.
I don't care if you played 10 times or 51 times.
Right.
That's not good.
No. And the other thing too is like Tennessee has long been considered like, the second biggest and most prominent power in the SEC all time, like behind Alabama. And so that's still very, very surprising. I think going into the Swamp is a huge opportunity for them. And we'll break down a little bit of the game and talk to Mike about it as well. But like, I think it's a huge opportunity for them for a number of reasons. And I think it's a huge opportunity for Florida too, because, like I was asked this morning on radio, like, and I'll forward the question to you. Like, which of these teams needs this game more, in your opinion?
Oh, Florida by far.
Really? I'd say Tennessee, hands down.
Really?
Yeah. You tell me why Florida.
I think Napier, like if Napier were, let's say Tennessee, the spread is tight. So, I mean, obviously we're expecting it to be close, but tight-ish. But like, let's say Tennessee won by 3 touchdowns.
Right.
Can you imagine after what they looked like against Utah and then getting blown out at home for the first time, losing for the first time in 20 years to Tennessee? Like, you thought things were negative after the Utah game. I don't know that Napier, that would be very tough for him. Like, and a hypo if he loses it, I think it's a tough loss, but it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's also like,
why is it more important for Tennessee than for you?
So I think it's more important for Tennessee because it's one of those things where it's like you view yourself as a team that's like we're a better program than Florida right now. We're a better program than Florida. And you have an opportunity from a national spotlight to go out there and really prove a point. And I think there's a few fan bases. And programs that when they are presented with the opportunity to go out there and prove a point on a national scale or on a national level on national television, that they have this. I'm trying to think of who I should put this label on, because I don't usually, it's like the fan base or the coach or like a player or like a program. Like Lane Kiffin is a big enough asshole to go out there and pour it on teams when he wants to prove a point, right? Like I like Ryan Day and even Harbaugh a little bit, like with those two in that rivalry. Every level of Tennessee's fandom program, all that, it's the same level of asshole. And I mean that in an endearing way. I really do. Like, I mean that in an endearing way. And I know I bicker with Tennessee fans, but like, I mean, that is a fan base that is full of pride. And they're going to go down to Florida, a team that has probably given them more fits than any other program in the country, including Georgia State.
Or Austin P.
Austin P was a tough one. Austin Poop. No, I think when they go into the Swamp this weekend and they're only a 7-point favorite, I don't want to give away my pick yet until after we talk to Mike. But like, I think there's a really big opportunity here for Tennessee to make a statement, and I mean a big, big statement. So that's kind of where I'm going with it. And I think that like, because I also think this too, the longer this week goes on, the more we're going to see shit that's like that we saw during the Utah week for Florida. Like, oh man, like, it is an SEC team and, their quarterback might be out and blah, blah, blah. And in this case, it won't be those two things being said, but it'll be like, well, they've always struggled in the past going to Florida, and, and Napier might be on the hot seat and all those kind of things. Like, I think that those kind of things are going to, like, they're going to hear all week and have a chance to shut that up and shut up in a big way. I'll tell you one person that never shuts up ever and doesn't shut up in a big way is this guy who's rocking a mustache for some reason. Let's bring him in here. SEC. What is this? What is this mustache?
Hey,
why does it look good?
It's an honor to be here with the unofficial quarterback ranker of SDS, brother. Thanks for having me. Mustache is here because I bet on Bama, your damn shitty team let me down, so I had to do this for Longhorn Nation.
Oh. We do want to point out unofficial ranker.
Yeah, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Can you imagine if we let Chris Marler, the guy who knows the least about ball at SDS, can you imagine if we let him go out and post some just stupid obligatory rankings that are purely based on objectivity and purely for engagement on social media? What a travesty that would be. I know that the person who got upset about it doesn't listen to the podcast anyway, so I have zero problems with calling this out right now.
He's listening to an ACC pod. Does that even exist? I don't even know.
I'm sure it has dozens of listeners, and I'm sure it's up and running. I'm going to get in trouble. Let's talk to Mike, though. Mike, the mustache looks good.
I
Thank
actually
you.
do like it.
It was it was a T on Sunday, so
Gross.
that's why I did it. I did a T for them damn Longhorns, and that made me look even more like a pedo. So I had to shave that part off. But
yeah.
I like the stash. Yeah, it's growing on me. I probably won't cut it till Texas loses.
Okay. Well, I mean, that'll probably be this week to Wyoming, just knowing their luck. I'm kidding. All right. We brought you in for one thing and one thing only, and that is to make fun of you and shame you. But also to talk about SEC football, primarily one game, and it's your beloved Tennessee Vols, you big homer. We've been talking about this game a little bit before you got on here, and it's obviously one of the bigger games, I think, of the week, even though it's not the national game of the week on CBS. I mean, incredible rivalry, historic rivalry, probably a top 3 to 5 rivalry in the SEC, right? I think, especially during our lifetime.
Is it?
What are your? I think it is. I think like from.
I don't think it is
standpoint.
for Florida people. I think it is for Tennessee people. I don't even think Tennessee's in Florida's top 3 right now.
That could be. What are your thoughts going into the game in terms of just overall confidence? I think from Tennessee and that fan base going down there, because I was kind of shocked at the line being so low. I get why, but just the overall mindset of Tennessee fans going down there right now.
Florida sucks. No need to be worried about. I mean, it's overconfidence. I've never seen Of course, Tennessee fans are always seemingly confident going into this game for I don't know what reason. They have no reason to be confident, and many times, particularly in the Swamp, victory has been snatched in the closing moment. So I have no idea why people are confident, but they're overly confident, I would say.
I see that.
We were actually just talking about this. Obviously, it's been a struggle in Gainesville for Tennessee. An opportunity for Billy Napier to change the narrative about the trajectory of his program. Seems like a lot of negativity after that Utah game, the silly penalties, the mistakes. Chris argues that this game is bigger for Tennessee. Who do you think is bigger for between Napier and Heupel?
Well, I mean, I guess it just depends on what you're really saying, because if Tennessee is going to be a threat to Georgia, which I still think they could be, because I don't think Georgia has looked fantastic. They still look like the best in the SEC, not including Texas, of course, but they still look like the team to beat. But if Tennessee is going to have any chance of being that number 2 threat, yeah, they have to win this. But beyond that, no, I think all the pressure's on Florida, because I think if Billy Napier loses this game, I think he's going to be fired by the end of the year. Because if he can't beat Tennessee, he's probably going to lose at Kentucky. LSU's going to whoop his ass. Georgia, Florida. I mean, he's got to win one of these games. And Tennessee certainly seems like the most likely, considering they've not gotten that offense going. I never have been a huge believer in Joe Milton. I'm significantly more confident in Josh Heupel than I am Joe Milton to be elite. So if they can't beat this team, let's put it in the top 5 of their rivals. I don't think they're going to beat any of them this year.
I am so tired of talking about Joe Milton, but I will say this, and we'll of course
let's talk about him.
Let's talk about him. No, because it's like all offseason, and I think it's all for the wrong reasons. Like it's all stuff like, did you see how far he could throw that football? Like the first question I asked him on game day, week 1. How far can you throw the ball at 90 yards? Like, we all get it. We all fucking get it, Uncle Rico. We totally get it. I will say I've been impressed with his start to the season, even though it's been a little bit erratic at times and been inconsistent with throws. But the point that I think we made all offseason was what you want to do in that offense is not turn the ball over and be as efficient as possible. And him going 7 total touchdowns with 0 interceptions for the first 2 weeks is, I think, a really good sign. Now, not talking about Milton, even though we just did, what do you think is like the key from a position unit or like a player outside of him to win there? Because one thing I think that we're not talking enough about with Tennessee is this front 7, and they have been hellacious the first 2 weeks of the year. It's like 11 sacks in 2 games. Why are we not talking about that? And is that probably one of the keys to winning it in Florida?
That is the key, because if Florida can't run the ball, they've got no shot to win this game. I don't care what Joe Milton does. And in your little ramble there, I think there was a question, but what do they need to help? They just need to run the ball and not put the game on Joe Milton's shoulders. Yeah. I think that's critical. And to show off that big arm, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, but there's been so many drops. I feel like the Tennessee offense is just a little adjustment, a little miscue, a little penalty away from breaking pretty much open. So hit those deep shots because Tennessee's got the best rushing offense so far in the SEC, number 4 in the country. Now, that's definitely skewed by who they've played. I don't know that they're going to finish that well, but they are really good at running the ball. That's going to be the strength of the offense all season long. Just you just don't ask Joe Milton to beat a team like Florida on the road, particularly not this early in the season. Maybe down the line with the decaying dynasty, Alabama, a little bit different story, but not in this game. It just can't be on Joe Milton. And yeah, that's what we've been saying all offseason about this Tennessee defense. It's going to be the best ever under Heupel. They're deeper, more talented, and some of these 4- and 5-star defenders they got that, I don't know, people just don't pay attention, I guess. But some of those guys have started to blossom, and they're only in their second year, but they're already showing signs that Tennessee's pass rush, which they have more sacks than anybody in the SEC right now, it's been a big upgrade.
Mike, real quick, just to tell you this, because I love stats, and then Tyler, I don't mean to interrupt, but how about the fact that not only they have more sacks than everyone, they have more sacks than Alabama, South Carolina, Florida, Georgia, and LSU combined.
Elite. What can I say?
Love it.
For Florida defensively, they've been really good against the run this year, a little more weak in the past, but their DC, Austin Armstrong, he loves to bring blitzes. Corner blitzes, exotic looks. How is Milton? How's the offense been against blitzes? Because I would think against this offense, you wouldn't really want to get blitz heavy.
Well, all they really do is throw this damn bubble screen, so that should work pretty well against blitzers, and the tempo obviously will help there as well. But, yeah, I mean, Virginia and whoever the hell Austin Peay. Austin Peay they had a couple tackles for loss. They also gave up about 300 yards rushing. So, I mean, those were poor teams to kind of evaluate on that. This is certainly going to be their biggest test when it comes to exotic looks and new things. And you have to believe that Florida's going to, again, I think they're going to be coming after Joe Milton, but he's such a big guy that, I don't know, I think he can kind of, it takes a lot to bring him down. I'll just put it that way. But again, he's been so inaccurate. I don't know that I'd bring a ton of pressure. Just force him to beat you with accuracy, which he's not proven he can do so far this year.
Mike, a little bit more big picture. We'll get you one more question apiece and get a prediction from you. But big picture wise, and we're not going to talk about Alabama because I don't want to hear your opinion on them ever because I know it's only going to hurt my feelings. But obviously the name, SEC Mike, I know where your allegiances lie and all that kind of stuff. And we both worked for an SEC football site together. The SEC being down so far, I think it's a fair criticism. I do. I think that it doesn't take anything away from the resume they've built over the past 15, 20 years. But the SEC being down a little bit, do you think that's something that is going to continue throughout the year? I mean, when we end the season, the optics are still going to be that way? Or how do you see this thing playing out?
Do we care about the preseason or do we care about the regular season? Come on, those were preseason junk games. So, no, I don't care about that. But, no, I did a Saturday night live show. It was called The SEC Sucks because I think it may right now. You know what I mean? Like, it's been awful. It's the worst start to a season I can recall for an entire league since, since I can ever remember, not just recently. So I don't know that it continues all season, but I think it says something about the quarterback play, which I've been touting. I don't think it's as bad as people perceive, but maybe it is. Because there's not many elite quarterbacks right now. But again, I also think it's on a lot of these coaches to utilize their talent better, like a Jalen Milroe. I mean, it's just been all. I don't know what the hell they're doing. I told you, the minute they hired Tommy Rees, that's when I started the decaying dynasty. That was the end of it. He's garbage.
There's no reason that they should have. I mean, Texas is such a bad football team, too, and being in the top 5 now and not having any kind of offensive weapons or anything like that, it's an embarrassing.
What's that got to do with Milroe? And not using RPO and not utilizing the quarterback run game.
Okay, well that is a fair point, dickhead.
Let's make him Tom Brady. How about that? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't get that part. I don't get that part.
Gee, Tommy Rees, man, you got to sign him up to an extension or something, please, God.
Chris actually said he's gonna be the next head coach of Bama. in the
I
offseason.
did.
I hope so.
Preseason.
I hope so.
All right. So it sounds like if you were Florida's DC, you're going to make Joe Milton beat you. So let's get the prediction. Can Joe Milton go down night game in the Swamp? Been 20 years since you've won there, and be the leader to take them to a victory.
Just about everything I predicted has been wrong. So I don't know what to say here, except for the decaying dynasty, of course. That was 100% on. But man, I'll say no on Joe Milton, but that doesn't mean Tennessee can't win this game. I think their running game is elite, and I don't care what Florida did against McNeese. I mean, there's a reason.
Nuts.
Yeah, exactly. I picked Florida 6th in the East. I think that's about where they are right now. Where Tennessee very well could be the second best team in the entire conference, not just the East. I'm not ready to believe that they are right now, but yeah, I mean, I think it's a comfortable win for Tennessee, and feel free to clip this because Florida's probably going to win by 4 touchdowns now.
So I wouldn't do that to you, Mike. I wouldn't do that to you. I'm not going to have some sort of very. Yeah, I know you would. I fucking know you would.
Florida State Twitter after the LSU. Florida State prediction.
Thank you for all the extra views. I do appreciate it.
We love it, Mike. Speaking of views, tell everyone where they can find you. You've been a tremendous guest, and obviously you're doing a great job. Happy for you, buddy. So tell everyone where they can find your stuff, and we will talk to you again soon.
Yeah, the podcast, that SEC podcast. Highest rated SEC show on Apple and Spotify. Woo-hoo. We got YouTube as well. And just search SEC Mike, and you can hear more terrible takes from yours truly.
All right. Thanks, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
Is that it?
That's it.
In and out, huh?
Okay. We're still recording, so we got to go.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. All right. So we've, like I said, we talked about this game before we brought Mike on. Let's sum it up now. Look, what do you think? What's your prediction for this game? What are you taking from a bet standpoint?
So I'm gonna current line 6.5.
Yeah,
I'm gonna take Florida. Not only the history behind this game, but I also just think you're going to get this week. Some of my picks revolve around coaches that are desperate to get a home win against a rival. That's Napier has to win this game.
Yeah.
And I just think they've been really good on defense against the run. I think they can neutralize that aspect of Tennessee's game. And I think they will try to make Joe Milton. And and look, he's a Tennessee guy, Mike is. And he's like, I don't know if I trust Milton. We've been on that train for the last 2 years. I just don't think Milton can go in. Tennessee's 99th in explosive pass plays this year, which is where Milton falls way short of Hendon Hooker. I think that's what you need in this game. And I think night game in the Swamp, crowd's going to be liquored up, riled up, looking for a win. I got Florida outright 28-27 over Tennessee. Snatching victory.
Florida outright.
Yet again. Yep. I got Florida outright in this game.
Tennessee needs to go down to the Swamp, put an end to all the shit they've heard, because this is one I think, rivalry and game they have been disrespected in. And undeservingly so, because I think they are a better program than Florida right now by a lot. And maybe Florida can dig back out of that hole they're in currently, whatever. Tennessee at 6.5. The first half money line, lock of the week. Tennessee's awesome. The other lock of the week.
They failed us against Virginia on all those.
No, they didn't. They covered the spread.
Total.
Yeah, your pick. My picks worked.
Oh, okay.
With Tennessee, I was 3-1 on that.
You're right.
I also went 10-2 last week, so I'm feeling pretty confident in a lot of stuff right now. Pretty much everything but my body. So I will say this: Tennessee minus 6.5, lock of the week. You find an alternate line where they win by 10, take that shit too. Tennessee wins this game by 20 points in Florida this week.
Wow. Okay. Well,
yeah.
I think based on this year's track record, Tennessee fans got to be feeling good because I've been wrong a lot and you've been right a lot.
It's a shame that we've probably warded off all of Tennessee fans from listening to the podcast because of my blistering negativity about them all the time. But anyway, let's get on to another. You know what? Let's get into the most negative fucking game of the week. Okay, this should just be the refuse to have any sort of chill online social media mental health is a joke bowl Georgia and South Carolina, two fan bases that couldn't be further apart from wins and dominant historically, or being dominant historically, but for whatever reason have the same amount of anger on social media, which I learned this past week when I rated South Carolina as the 13th ranked team in the SEC in my they beat Furman and they got embarrassed by North Carolina. I'll move them up to 11 so their fans shut up. But I mean, again, we want to remind you that Chris Marler's takes are not the official takes of SDS. They are the unofficial takes of SDS. God forbid we have any kind of accuracy.
If you were thinking about it, like if you're a baseball fan, like your take is like the AAA team.
Yeah, I'm the Gwinnett Stripers.
You feel good when they win the championship, but it's like nobody really cares because it's unofficial, really.
Yeah, but it'd be like if the Gwinnett Stripers had like all of the big leaguers that should be on the team.
Yeah,
but like the team at like in the like actual MLB is like tanking for the first round pick. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that because all I've done is win. Anyway, Georgia, South Carolina. There's like one of the questions that I don't know, and I wish I knew more than anything in the world is what Shane Beamer did to Kirby Smart. Yeah, because he hates him. He hates him. I mean, he hates him like Urban Meyer hates making good decisions and himself. Like it is so bad, so bad. He hate me. They have won their last two games. So Kirby against Shane Beamer, they routed them last year in Columbia, 45-7. It was so bad at one point that there was like a gaggle of like 100 sorority girls just waltzing to the end zone. That's how little the game mattered for some reason. They lost 45-7. Then they've lost two games under Shane Beamer to Georgia by a combined 68 points, which is tough to do. Okay. They go to Athens. Georgia just desperately seeking any level of disrespect for one, but also looking for a wake-up call to this team that has struggled a little bit early in games. Not to where it's mattered. They've outscored their opponents 93-10 in two games so far against inferior competition, but still 93-10 so far against their first two games. What are your thoughts on this game? And give me a pick.
This game, obviously, it's a 4-touchdown spread, so I don't think that the outcome is in question. To me, it's more so, what is Georgia really going to look like against a team that has a pulse? And to no fault of their own, they've played two patsies so far, and honestly have been a little bit disappointing. I'm sure they're keeping things very vanilla against Ball State and what was it, UT Martin? But I want to see Georgia come out and dominate before I'm a full believer in them right now, because there's so many moving parts of new in really important spots like quarterback and OC. This D-line should eat against that South Carolina O-line. South Carolina's going to have to hit explosive plays with Spencer Rattler, who's had a good start to the year. I just don't think you're going to see a lot of down-to-down success for South Carolina in this game. And South Carolina can't run the ball this year, so I think it's going to be tough. Georgia should be able to run the ball in South Carolina. Carolina is 76th in the country in defensive sex rate. Defensive success rate against the run. I'm going to take Georgia so the line's 27.5. I'll go just over that. Georgia wins 38-10. I think they make a statement on defense. I think that would be, that obviously takes the total under. I'd be a little bit of a surprise because, Rattler has been good, but I don't think if you can't run against Georgia, it's going to be very tough to find success on offense. Yeah,
so in Rattler, just very, very, very much under the radar, has had one of the better seasons of maybe the best season of any quarterback in the SEC. It just doesn't have anything to show for it because he only has 3 touchdowns to no interceptions. But he's been 83% in his completion percentage. Xavier Legette leads the SEC in receiving yards as well. Rattler's been really good to start the season, and I think the completion percentage thing and his QB rating or passer rating is what I'm most impressed with, because he's not getting any help for his offensive line. I said this in another podcast today on the Spurs Up show that I think this is a really good opportunity for him for his draft stock, because I know that might sound crazy, but when they turn on the tape, before the draft, the first thing they're going to do is turn on the Georgia tape, because it's as close to an NFL defense as you're going to have faced. Now, I think that draft tape against Georgia went a very long way with Will Levis and what he was able to do 2 years ago against that defense, which was basically just manage the game elitely, like 2 touchdowns, 0 turnovers. We've talked about it in the past in regular season games against Power 5 opponents or against FBS opponents. Spencer Rattler only has 3 of his 19 starts where he's had more touchdowns than interceptions at the end of the game, which is tough to do. Thank you. I found that on my own. But I think he's been really
your unofficial quarterback rankings.
I put him at 4 this week, so people would leave me alone about it. But I also think that the Georgia stuff, like going in the same, I think that all the stuff surrounding it just has a recipe to disaster for me for South Carolina. And the first thing I looked up was like, all right, you gave up 9 sacks to North Carolina. What does it look like against Georgia team that is, I would assume, just getting after the quarterback nonstop with all those guys? They are rotating players so much. I talked about one of our listeners the other day. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say his name, so I don't want to out him, but we had this conversation, I think actually this morning or yesterday, about how much rotation that Kirby's actually started to already put onto that defense, getting second and third team reps and rotating guys in and out. Georgia only has 1 sack on the season, which is kind of surprising. But I think this is what he does, where it's like you talk about the stat I gave you last week on offense, 12 different receivers with at least 1 catch. Now you're talking about all these guys getting 30-plus snaps already in the season. He's developing depth better than anyone else in the SEC, better than anyone else probably in the country. And I think that when they get to this game, the recipe for disaster is now Kirby's somehow got some fucking bulletin board material and something taken out of context with Tonka Hemingway when he was asked at media days what the toughest places to play were, and he didn't say Georgia. And so now Kirby has said in his post-game presser, it was kind of positioned poorly by the reporter, but like basically saying like it sounds like Tonka's calling out our fans, and they need to show up and be loud, which you saw how that happened for Arkansas in 2021. You saw how it worked out for Tennessee last year. I think it's going to be a crazy environment. I think Georgia, I wouldn't take the first half at all with them because they've struggled so much, but Georgia's going to cover the spread.
Didn't Tate Ratledge, Georgia's own player, say that Georgia's like there were other better stadiums?
That was also somewhat taken out of context, but yes.
Okay. All right. Here's one that confuses me, and I know this line you absolutely hate.
Oh god, is it 5.5?
It's close. 12 p.m. on the SEC network. Number 18, Kansas State at Missouri. Missouri +5. Over under 48.
Least favorite number.
To me, I don't get this. Like, I think Kansas State is a much better program right now than Missouri. Mm-hmm. K-State's 2-0 against the spread this year. Missouri 0-2. Kansas State has looked good. Missouri struggled last week against Middle Tennessee State. I don't love Brady Cook. Kansas State's defensive front 7 is really good. The strength of their team is their O-line, so you love that. I love their head coach, Chris Kleiman. In those last 67 games, going back to when he was the North Dakota State, 46-21 against the spread, 29-9 as his favorite. So I'm leaning Kansas State here big. I mean, by 10+. I don't know. Do you see this game differently? The number scares me because it's at 5. I would think they'd be is it because it's an SEC game on the road? Like, what are you seeing here?
So I'm trying to find. It's a noon game, right? So it's down to 4.5 at DraftKings. The over or under at 48 is kind of surprising too. This is one of my favorite matchups of the week is the Kansas State offensive line versus the Missouri front 7 and specifically their defensive line. I think that's going to be a really good matchup. I love that stat what you just said, Kansas State. I think Kansas State is a program that is better than people are giving them credit for. And I know that it's different year over year and all that kind of stuff. They lost like one of the best players they've had in program history with Deuce Vaughn. I think they win the game, but also I wouldn't be surprised. Brady Cook, by the way, the quarterback from Mizzou, having a hell of a year so far. Like not a ton of pass attempts. You have a close game for whatever reason against MTSU a week ago, but the kid has been really, really good so far in that offense. I think it's going to take a huge week out of him. Kansas State team that's kind of built more like a SEC team because they're physical up front. I wonder what that looks like for 60 full minutes. And here's the thing too, is I wish this was a night game in Como because I think that it's a sellout. It's one of the first sellouts they've had in quite some time. It's going to be a fun environment. I think it's going to be a really fun environment. I'm going to be a homer and pick Mizzou to win outright. And I wouldn't touch this game from a betting standpoint, besides maybe the under for me, but that's it.
All right, let's go to the backyard brawl, 7:30 on ABC. Pitt at West Virginia. This is just a great game every year. It
Yeah.
seems like Pitt looked awful last week. They lost to Cincinnati. Their quarterback, BC transfer Phil Dracovic, who was supposed to be like a pretty good NFL prospect, has been pressured on 45% of his dropbacks.
That's
Pitt's O-line is
so
bad.
bad.
This is gonna be an ugly game. I think it's gonna be a defensive game. I mentioned earlier, I'm on coaches who are in a desperate situation to win a game. I think Neil Brown, head coach of West Virginia, home game, spread's only 1. They're 1-point underdog. I think I'm going to take the desperate head coach here, underdog at home. I think Pitt might be a lot worse than I thought they would be this year. So I think that West Virginia gets the upset at home.
Yeah, again, not a game I'm going to bet.
Yeah.
Like, that is an incredible stat though on the dropbacks. Like that is not good. That is not good at all. Like I said, I wouldn't touch this game. I'll just move it along, honestly, to another game. Here's an interesting one that coming out of the 12 o'clock slate, like moving out of the 12 o'clock slate. We're like,
there is one more 12 o'clock slate we want to talk about.
You want to talk about
LSU, Mississippi State?
Oh shit! I thought you were gonna say Florida State.
No.
Oh no. Let's talk about LSU Mississippi State, because I have this down. We said it earlier. Like LSU -9. That's. I'll let you cover the game. I'm taking LSU -9. I think it's one of the better bets of the week.
Yeah, I went back and I was kind of looking at some games that I missed last week. And we mentioned on the recap pod like a nice win for Mississippi State against Arizona last week. I actually think they were pretty fortunate to win that game.
Yeah.
They were +4 in turnover margin, which we know you can't rely on week to week. They were actually outgained despite that turnover margin by over 120 yards by Arizona. Arizona had a lot of chances to win that game and just kind of got unlucky. I think LSU is probably a little undervalued for week 1, just getting stomped and basically everyone wrote them off.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've been on record that I think Florida State, when they're operating at peak efficiency, is the best team in the country this year. I don't think LSU is a bad football team at all. Interesting change up for Mississippi State this year. Obviously, after Leach passed away, different offense. Mississippi State, 63% of their plays have been rushing plays through the first 2 games.
Yeah.
LSU is a really good,
very big number.
Yeah, that's a very big number. Like especially in today's game,
Right.
LSU is a good run defense. That's not where you're going to want to hurt LSU. Their secondary is where they're having issues. They have Mason Smith back now, which should only help the D-line. I probably wouldn't bet this game with real money because I feel like every time LSU goes to Mississippi State, something weird happens. Maybe that's just recency bias. But I'll take LSU to win the game. Maybe the bet I would take is LSU first half.
Yeah, -5.5.
Yeah. Oh, oof.
Exactly.
I'm going to take LSU 35, Mississippi State 24. So I have them covering in this game.
Yeah, I think I do too. I do want to say one thing about Mississippi State, because I think it's a program that's not getting as much attention maybe as they should. Great win last week. Like, I don't think Arizona is a powerhouse or a great football team by any means, but it's a great victory. And the most impressive part of that game, most impressive part of the game, is the fact that Zach Arnett, a first-year coach, when you're playing a team that you're a 9-point favorite against at home, right? Like probably a little bit too much. You're playing them at home. You have a 4-year starter at quarterback in your back pocket. You limit him to only 17 throws. Now, I'll tell you right now, if they lose this game, I'm probably crucifying Zach Arnett for not throwing the football more with Will Rogers. But the fact that he stuck to his guns, stuck to whatever offensive identity they want to have as a program, and keep that in play, I was very impressed with as a first-year coach in his third, if you count the bowl game as a head coach. I thought that was really impressive. All right, 3:30. Scrolling through here. Interesting one here, actually, at noon too, Wisconsin, Georgia Southern. Kind of keeping with that theme at 3:30. We don't need to talk about this game, but I have Bama covering 31 against South Florida. I think they go out there.
A lot of frustration out there.
A lot of frustration is going to be out there.
And it'll be 90% Bama fans there.
Yeah, for sure. If they show up. They didn't show up at home. Like they didn't stop the stadium last week at home against Texas. So let's see how that goes.
They're apathetic right now.
They're at the what?
They're getting to the apathetic stage. It's whatever.
So obnoxious. Minnesota at North Carolina is an interesting one. North Carolina is a near touchdown favorite, which I think is a little bit too much. I wouldn't bet the game, but I probably have them plus 7.5. So the one I wanted to talk about though, which of course now I have somehow fucking lost track
Duke
of,
Northwestern, right?
is Duke Northwestern. Where the hell did it go? Maybe, we already talked about Georgia. Maybe it was the Minnesota North Carolina game. This is not a game I would bet, but I do think that Minnesota plus 7.5 is a good play there.
I see it at 8 now too.
See it at 8.
Yep.
I mean, like Minnesota's a pretty well coached team, and North Carolina struggled last week against App State. So I wonder what that looks like. Let's see here. Scrolling down, here's another one. This is very interesting. Washington at Michigan State.
Well, what kind of status is Michigan State in right now as a program?
Very good question.
Like that could be an absolute blowout.
It's only a 16-point line.
I wonder how much it's moved since the Mel Tucker news came out.
I don't know, but that's surprising to me. I would still probably take it, to be honest. I like the over. So it's Washington's a 16-point favorite on the road against a Power 5 team. The over under is 58. The first half over is 9.5. I mean, you've been big on Washington so far. They've been really good. What do you think about that?
I think I like that bet a lot. I think you could try to play the angle that like the players will rally.
Yeah.
I think that's obviously devastating news for those players that essentially the guy that recruited them there is probably not going to be their head coach anymore.
Right.
Harlan Barnett, he's a Michigan State legend. I actually know a little bit about him because he was Willie Taggart's defensive coordinator.
Oh, God. Yeah.
He's taking over as interim coach. Maybe they rally around him. You know, he's a program guy. Like, well, I guess not because he left there for Florida State. But, you know, like Odell Haggins, every time we've on Florida State's, he's like the D tackle coach. But every time we fired a coach, he steps in as interim and they like the players rally around him. Maybe you get that out of Michigan State. But, dude, I think Washington's way too strong of a program. I don't think Michigan State's that good. And I think they're probably in a little bit of a disarray. So I'd take Washington.
Yeah, I completely agree. I might take them minus 9.5 in the first half more than anything. But I like the 16 as well. Another game in the SEC is kind of interesting. We already talked about obviously about the Tennessee Florida game, but another one's kind of interesting. We didn't spend that much time on it, but still, Ole Miss, Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech traveling to Oxford. Ole Miss has Bama next week. A game I think they're probably, chomping at the bit to get to a little bit, especially after watching Bama struggle against a similar type of play caller. Ole Miss is a 18.5-point favorite and a 10.5-point first half favorite against Georgia Tech. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm interested because Georgia Tech looked a lot better in week 1 than I thought they would.
Right.
Maybe they found something with Haynes King there, but the 18's kind of tough because you could see a 17-point win.
Yeah.
You really could. I don't think that they're going to, if they get up big, I think they could get conservative wanting to rest their players for the Bama game. So I'll take Georgia Tech backdoor cover there.
Okay. Probably I would want to see what the team totals are, but I would touch. I think this is a game like we've seen it in the past where it's going in one or two ways with Kiffin, where it's like he wants them firing on all cylinders. And I've seen him put up like, I think 39 or something like that against Tulane a couple of years ago before the Bama game. And then we've seen him at other times where he's kind of pulled his foot off the gas. This game last year, I think, was 42-0, and it was about 21 or 28-0 at the half. They dominated in Atlanta. I do think that this Georgia Tech team is a little bit better. I would lean towards possibly. I like the 18.5 because I think they're able to pull away from them late. Another one that's a little bit interesting. How about this? BYU and Arkansas.
Yeah,
BYU. Yeah, like on the road, Arkansas is going to be playing without Rocket Sanders, which is obviously not ideal. I said this the other day too, though. I think that it kind of here's an interesting stat line. Okay, Arkansas is a 6.5-point first half favorite. They're only an 8.5-point favorite for the full game. That's very, very different and very low. You don't see that a lot. KJ Jefferson hasn't had he's averaging right around, I think, like under 200 yards passing per game. He hasn't had like a moment yet where he's just had to take over. I think that happens in this game. I don't know if I would touch the line necessarily, but I think from a game standpoint, really important game for Arkansas to keep momentum going into that showdown next week in Dallas with Texas A&M. And KJ Jefferson, like, listen, he's Superman, and I think that, like, he is the heart and soul of that team. If it gets close, I'm taking Arkansas and KJ Jefferson every single time. I don't think it's going to necessarily be that close.
Well, dude, this game was 52-35 last year, and KJ Jefferson went off on them in Provo, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So, home game, BYU, I think. I mean, the Puka Nacua kid, their wide receiver last year, dude, he had 10 or 11 receptions in his first NFL game this past weekend for the Rams.
Crazy.
So Keaton Slovis, the transfer from USC, then to Pitt, then to here, and still somehow I think he's eligible to play, maybe because he's a grad, has thrown for 500 yards this year, 4 touchdowns. So I like Arkansas at home, though. I think BYU coming into the South, deal with that humidity.
Yeah, I like that. Anything else on the board? There's a couple games I feel like game day you said is going to Colorado for Colorado State. That's kind of interesting. Here's one that's like I will tell you from a betting standpoint, Clemson minus 13.5 in the first half. I'm going to take it and regret it against FAU and Tom Herman. TCU at Houston. TCU is a 7.5 point favorite.
Yes, I do see that.
I just think that's an interesting, thing.
What do you have access to the Texas first half spread?
17.5.
I might like Wyoming there.
I do too.
Yeah. Now, it is a night game. It is a night game in Austin. You know, if that was a noon game, I'd be all over Wyoming.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is good, man. I mean, the slate's not great, but it's there's when there's gambling involved, it's always great.
It's always great. Always great. Yeah. All right. So I guess that wraps up for this week. Is there anything in particular you're looking forward to from this weekend? A player or anything like that, and takeaways you want to see from anyone around the country?
Definitely interested in watching Georgia against South Carolina just to see. I just don't feel like I have a true grasp on what they're going to be this year.
Right.
You know, and if they come out and dominate, I'll feel a little bit better. I'm interested in, obviously, the Florida-Tennessee game is the one I'm watching the most because I think, to your point, I think it's a good point that it is a really big game for Tennessee too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot to overcome here with, you know, the history and everything like that. So those are probably the 2 games that I'm looking forward to the most. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think LSU Mississippi State will be fun. I think this could be a statement game for them. And then, like I said, I think the main 4. There's 4 games in the SEC with SEC teams that I think should be statement games, and I wonder what that looks like. And I'm trying, and 3 of the 4 involve a road team. And I want to see if LSU goes out there and proves a point against a Mississippi State team that I do think is inferior, and especially coming off a gutsy win a week ago. Like, you have an opportunity to get everything back on track to and get further away from that, all the narratives that happened at the FSU game. Bama on the road, you need to get up early. And I want to see if Jalen Milroe's feet are more involved, and I want to see if Tyler Buckner comes in at all and creates any kind of quarterback controversy. You hope he doesn't going in next week against Ole Miss, because that could be a recipe for disaster. But I would love to see Jalen Milroe having more design runs. Georgia, like you said, I just have this feeling that Georgia dominates this game from start to finish. And it really looks like, because here's the thing, they only have to do this a couple times a year, man. They only have to do it a couple times a year. And I think this is an opportunity where they get to really flex their muscle on a inferior opponent like South Carolina. And then last but not least, man, like we talked about for the majority of the show, Tennessee. I just have a feeling that Joe Milton, this is like a coming out party for him, and they have a really good game down there in Florida. I think it's a game where Tennessee prove a point. I think they prove a point down there in Gainesville. So, but we will see. Tell everyone where all the stuff they need to know in the outro, and I'm going to go eat some food.
Yep. As always, we appreciate you all listening to the show. It would really help us and the growth of the show if you would rate us 5 stars on Apple and Spotify. Leave us a review. We'll read the best ones on air. Like and subscribe to the YouTube page as well. Leave us a message this weekend. 770-674-8233. That's the game day hotline. Whether you're pissed off, having a having a cocktail, you want to give us some breakdowns of the game, let us know. Again, that number is 770-674-8233. Don't forget to check out the SDS podcast weekly with Connor O'Gara. For Chris, I'm Tyler.
We have one review, kind of.
Okay.
It comes from Richter Scale on Twitter. He said, for the last year, I've been listening to Burn Funquist on Michael Bratton and Locked on SEC, my first daily listen of the day. Never checked his actual show out with Tyler until today. It's fucking great. What was I thinking? So glad to have you along for the ride, Richter Scale.
Thanks, Richter Scale.
Yeah.
All right. For Chris, I'm Tyler. You guys have a great weekend. Best of luck to your teams.